Morning to you. Today is Friday, the 6th of March, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. So, this week we've spent on governance quiz, and I'm going to show you in the graph here where we are. So, Monday we talk about directors' exposures and enforcement. Tuesday, we spoke about reporting inflation and controls. Remember, we spoke about 98,000 words in some of these direct board decks. It's like a book. It's like a Hobbit from J.J. Tolkien. On Wednesday, we talk about AI and the cyber oversight, where AI is not a task thing to do in your or implemented in your organization. Is pretty much something that had to be at the operational level, right? Yesterday, we talked about succession and preparing a strong succession plan. And the succession plan also implies who is next in the line of leadership in your organization. And today, we're going to talk about something that wraps a week, but at the same time, avoids is something that is avoid or directors avoid talking about, particularly they don't talk about this frequently because it feels very personal. And this is talking about claims, reputational fracture, and directors' liabilities. And this is something that in the design that we have here, this is my advisory operation system, right? So I always say that actually a company, everything is happening at the same time right now. And when people are more used to see that actually things are linear, so what's the next fire, what's the next month end, which is the next quarter end, etc., etc. So it's kind of a linear thing, and they are missing many things around them that actually are happening at the same time right now, and actually have a high impact on the result of the quarter end, month end, year end, etc., etc. Now, when we see the model that is operating in this place, we spoke mostly the whole week about this section underneath, which is about performance, governance, risk, and compliance, and your assets. And I come in always about assets because when you have things that are treated internally as a product, like your intellectual property, then you start to see how it's perceived by your internal teams, as how the care that they take about it, how is presented to the world, to your supply chain, to your customers, to your investors, to your stockholders, etc. So it's very important to treat things as an asset. Now, and when we talk in this part, which is control and resilience in terms of the systems, we are not necessarily talking about software, because in governance, risk, and compliance, yeah, you have softwares that help you with that. But at the end, the decision makers are people. And then us back to the top of the circle here, which is people. So you see that governance, people, and governance and risk and compliance are very, very highly related one to the other. So we are going to explore today these things that actually are not often spoken in the boards, which is the claims, the reputational fracture, and director's liability. Now, this applies for large PLCs, smaller PLCs, private companies, and individuals, because since the moment that you have an article of incorporation in the company house in UK, you have already responsibilities as a director, or higher up as a non-executive director, etc., etc. So it's very important to understand that while I'm referring to larger organizations or PLCs or publicly listed companies, remember that this applies almost for everyone, or to everyone that have these kind of responsibilities, right? So from the assets lens, and how we take the brand and trust. So because trust is not a communications problem, really, it's a governance product. And if we treat it as a governance product, then, as I mentioned earlier, you take a different care about it. You want to show you want to understand which is your audience, who you're going to explain what you do, how you do it, what is a benefits of that, what are the risks of not doing that, etc., etc. So here is that word again, risk. And the main risk today, in today's environment, the risk, as I mentioned the whole week, is velocity. But no, the public velocity is the velocity when the trust breaks. The markets react faster than internal investigations. And why is that? Social media, whistleblowers, you name it. So it's the things in communications and how fast things happening are staggering today. And yes, directors and officers insurance premiums is probably one of your things. I said, well, directors offer insurance premiums have softened in the UK market, so it actually means that you're going. That's not that risky. But the WTW, which is a Willis Towers Watson, which is a directors and officers update, this is a consulting firm, in case you're wondering what WTW is. They are very explicit about many clients seeing decreases, right? So it's known. That's good news for the buyers, but it's not a reason to relax, because if you relax too much, what happens? You start to be a little bit careless. So the risk is not that the risk is softened. So I give you some examples. The green claims scrutiny is very, very, very alive now, right? The green claims. And the Financial Conduct Authority's anti-greenwashing guidance exists because the firms are pushing claims that did not match reality, right? So you say, well, my director liabilities are decreasing, the premiums are softening, premiums I mean insurance, and then, but actually you are signing the dotted line with the green disclaimers, right? So the greenwashing exists, and perhaps you're signing something that you don't realize actually doesn't have the controls, but the Financial Conduct Authority is watching that very carefully. And we mentioned that many directors were suspended on average 8 years. 1,036 directors, we discussed this early this week. And the investigation continues. So the Insolvency Service is still investigating organizations and their directors. So the other thing that actually I want to highlight today is that the UK scrutiny litigation is becoming more visible. And perhaps you've seen the shows in the UK. There are big shows about legal battles, etc. But now it's coming, it exists in the UK. We already mentioned the insolvency inspections or agencies, but now are getting more visible to the public, which and also defense cost and quantum concerns are highlighted everywhere. So this is for coming from Marsh, which is an insurance broker. And by the way, I mentioned the word quantum. So what quantum means? It refers to external forces or unexpected shifts in environments in which companies and people operate, right? For example, I'll give you one quantum. This is what happened last week in Iran, in the bombing in the Middle East. That is a quantum. So there was a lot of news in the media, a lot of speculation, a lot of opinions. But when the strike happens, that was not an opinion anymore or a position, was reality. And those are the quantums or the potential quantums that the insurance company call, because you don't have control about these things, but actually create a lot of ramifications in terms of your responsibilities. Now, let's take a look at 3 problems to consider here. Number 1, directors and officers pricing moving down does not mean director exposure is down. Moving down, I mean liabilities insurance. So remember, we mentioned WTW's directors and officers market update shows many buyers seeing lower insurance premiums in a soft market. Problem number 2 is that greenwashing is now explicitly policed in UK financial service communications. And by the way, I mentioned the UK, but actually this happened all across Europe, all across all the other geographies in the world, but with a different regulator watching it. But the Financial Conduct Authority guidance on the anti-greenwashing rule sets expectation on sustainability claims to be fair, clear, and not misleading, right? So this is a problem, because actually if you trust in the reports without having a very, very good understanding of what you are signing as a board member, as a director, or as an executive in a company, the Financial Conduct Authority, they are watching. They want it to be fair, clear, and not misleading. So be careful. Problem number 3, securities litigation and claims dynamics are live UK themes now. So remember, you have in the TV shows, the big shows about this, but now it's coming more evidence in UK because always existed, but it was closed doors, but now it's getting more open. So Marsh, the insurance broker, flags the rise in UK securities litigation and highlights the potential quantum, and again, this is the environment, and the complexity of defense costs, because this is not easy and neither cheaper. So in other words, imagine trust is a company credit score. So one public breach and every future decision gets priced differently. What I mean with this, and probably you're not familiar, we are not very familiar in Europe about this, but probably we watch movies where this is mentioned a lot of time, your credit score. So in the US, I think it's more evident. People are very, very concerned and very protective of their credit score because actually pretty much the financial spine of their life it could be a private and corporate or a business, is their credit score. They have to be very careful how they handle that. And now it's coming more and more evident in the UK, but in a different way. So actually, in terms of responsibility of directors of the companies in the corporate or business environment. So as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider is the following. Number 1, treat claims as a governance scenarios, not insurance administration, right? So build 3 claims triggers you rehearse: cyber incidents, green claim challenges, and profit warnings or disclosures issues. So each with an owner, a decision rights, and escalation steps, right? This is very important. So it's something that you rehearse already. So when you're rehearsing things, you start to see where the sharp edges are, so then you can polish the things to make it better. So if eventually something happened, you're ready to go. Number 2, use the soft directors and officers market to fix structure, not just price. Review limits, indemnities, and notification discipline, so you do not discover gaps mid-incident. In other words, read the fine print. And number 3, add an independent challenge where reputation risk breeds, right? So an advisory board, particularly international advisory board with ESG, integrity, communications, legal, and cyber capabilities helps you spot the mismatch between what you say and what you do before the Financial Conduct Authority, investors, or claimants do, right? So prepare. Now, interestingly, I heard this many times, is a star hire. And this is where the star hire thinking fails. And what is a star hire? So the boards hire a high-profile executive and hope the judgment covers the gaps. I'm meaning when I'm saying in the worst-case scenarios. So, but the judgment, again, is not a system. And liabilities does not care how impressive the CV looks. When the damage is done or when the reputation damage is done, it's already done. People don't forget about things. And remember, and this is coming from psychology, you need 5 positives to compensate 1 negative, right? So if you're doing positive, and then you have 1 negative, people are going to remember more the negative than the positive. And this is part of our neurology. Yeah. So that our lizard brain, as they call it, because we are wired, if you may, to detect danger, right? When you see danger, you remember that very, very, very well, because we are neurologically wired to that. It's not something actually we do because we are negative people. It's actually a defense mechanism, it's a warning mechanism, it's a survival mechanism. So this is why I highly recommend an international advisory board as an operating system model in your organization, which is the graph that we are seeing just in front of our screen. That's why I leave it here, so you can see that it's an operating system. It's an ecosystem where everything is happening at the same time right now. So an international is because the risks are cross-border now. So the impact of the bombing of last weekend and what's happening through the week will have ramifications everywhere. Social changes, technological changes, there are disruptions in technology in terms of data centers that were bombed. I think that Amazon or AWS. Distribution now is the commercial hubs and distribution hubs are moving north or moving south. So there are changes everywhere. There are social, technological, and economical changes are going to happen. And in terms of governance, because it's an informal advice that does not scale, right? So this is not something that actually is set on stone. So it's an advice from the outside in. So you don't have to compress all this knowledge and this capacity to make decisions. You can focus on the things that are important to make those decisions with a safety net of an international advisory board, where you have members that can swap every 6 months because expertise goes stall at one point. Because if you were thinking about, for example, last week, in terms of international expansion, whatever is the case, now the things change. So one of the members that probably is a very, very good supply chain or, let's say, fast-moving goods expert, today is not as needed as a geopolitical expert. So then you can swap that member for 6 months to understand exactly where you want to stand or where the world is going to move in the next 6 months. And doesn't mean that actually it's going to be a crystal ball and you know everything. But at least you have a better understanding from a team of experts looking from the outside in your organization, and then you from the in out can do better decisions. So you avoid big consulting overheads, you avoid talent lock-in, and you create a live challenge function that keeps trust inside with the reality or aligned with the reality. Now, what do you gain working with me? So you gain outcomes, differentiators, and risk reductions. And I mentioned many of them already, but let's look into specific. One outcome is a board own claims trigger playbook, an advisory bench or people there that protects trust by forcing alignment between controls, disclosures, and public claims. In terms of the differentiator, I built a 6 months international advisory board based on your actual exposure map. Then run scenarios, drills that yield board action, not just insights. But many times we have all these insights, but which is the business outcome of these insights? That's a big challenge, and you have to address it. So we help with that too. In terms of risk reduction, you exploit the soft director and office market conditions to strengthen cover and discipline while you harden your governance to make it stronger, rather than waiting to the market to tighten or to tight you after an incident. Now, here's not a not so pleasant line to end the week, but trust breaks when boards sign off on stories they cannot evidence under the pressure. That's why it's so important to have somebody, a team outside in that can look after you. Now, one action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. Run a 25-minute table stop. So, where are challenge on a green claim tomorrow? So if we are challenged on a green claim tomorrow, and then capture the first 5 escalation calls and the missing evidence, right? So you have a challenge. Who will be the escalation calls, and what is the evidence that is missed? And find 5 green claims in your own organization. So it's like a self-assessment. If you cannot do this in 25 minutes or less, probably you have a problem, and it's going to be costly at one point. So just look into that, and you may say, well, we don't have a green challenge. You have one, because even there is a requirement for large organizations that are cascading down to all the supply chain. So they are going to ask you for reports that perhaps you are not obliged to do, or there is not a legal requirement to do. But if you want to continue operating, holding those contracts and renewing those contracts, probably you have to do some effort there. So be aware of that too, if it's not happening already. So let's pause here for today and reconvene next week. And remember, if you're a board member or a leader in a company and you want a B team advising on your people, brand, and trust, Set up a 30-minute call so I can understand your position today, how an independent international advisory board looking from the outside in can help you and your team without stepping on your toes, without a traditional consulting overhead, and without the public theater. Have a great day, a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. Thank you, and bye-bye.